Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead. Our topic today is that of water quality and swine health. And joining us to talk about that and more is Dr. Gabi Doughan of Iowa State University. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
For those of you that are tuning in from our audience, we thank you for joining us as well. If you have any questions, feel free to post those there in the chat area of your screen. If you're joining us from social media, feel free to post your questions directly in the social feed. So, Dr. Dawn, please start us off by introducing yourself and the work you do at the Swine Medicine Education Center there at Iowa State University.
Absolutely. So I'm a veterinarian, first off. I'm specialized in swine. And then I also am a technical project specialist. So I graduated vet school from Iowa State back in 2021. And then I just obtained my master's and PhD actually in waterline ecology type topics in May of 2025. And so what my responsibilities currently look like at the university is I work in the diagnostic lab here up at the College of Vet Med, and then kind of work on some education and outreach initiatives. I also work on some things within our department here at the college. And then I finally work on research and water quality specifically for swine, but I work on waterline disinfection systems and all sorts of things in that sense.
So at a very high level, why should we care about water quality in livestock and poultry? Does it have an impact similar to, say, what diet would in terms of performance and health?
Yeah, absolutely. So water quality is one of those things where we really think about it's involved in so many day-to-day activities. Like first, the animals are drinking it for their consumption. They're use it for temperature regulation, also use it for medication delivery, biosecurity, all sorts of things that we use, but we often don't really prioritize it, especially on the quality sense. We always make sure that the animals are getting water, but we don't necessarily kind of dive into the quality of that water. And so really it can have there's been lots of studies, especially on poultry side of things, fewer studies in swine and cattle, but it has shown that there can be an impact on growth and performance and then ultimately mortality as well. And another area that I don't think gets a lot of insight to, as I had mentioned, water is a mechanism to deliver medications. And so water quality in itself and delivering these medications can also have an impact, and how our water systems also deliver those, either water or water medications can also have an impact on that. So there's a lot of really important things to look at as far as water quality and its importance in animal production.
So where do you start when it comes to trying to understand the current water quality at your operation? What are some of the key parameters you look for when you're, say, testing water?
Yeah, so the first one, it's always about like testing the water source. We often have multiple types of water sources for a farm. So trying to understand what the input is there. And then also understanding what is the water quality that the animals are actually drinking. And so like in the farm. So when I look at water quality samples, there's quite a few things that I look at, but kind of in summary, I look for water hardness. I look at the water pH because that may determine the scaling ability or the amount of the mineral debris that builds up on the inside of those water lines. And so that can affect water restriction, ultimately, if the right conditions are met. And so we want to make sure that we're developing or delivering the most adequate amount of water to our pigs or other species. And so understanding that mineral scale compatibility is really important. The second thing is I look at trace minerals and trying to understand, are there any that are completely out of balance or something that could have issues with health or palatability or potential toxicities. Then I also look at, the total dissolved solids and sulfates and nitrates. Some species are more susceptible to that. Pigs are pretty tolerable. They tolerate that pretty well. But there are some instances that if they're high enough, we can see some diarrhea with it. And so we just want to keep, monitoring that. Finally, the thing that I assess is kind of the biological component of water. And so usually that's through coliforms and E. coli, through water counts, and then trying to understand the biofilm capabilities that are in those water systems too. So there's a lot of things to monitor and try to understand, but it's really important just to get a basis of what's happening in the system. Are, these water quality parameters potentially going to impact the health and performance of, our species.
You mentioned swine operations, and I know you've been doing a lot of work in water quality and in that regard here for some time now. What are some of the most noticeable impacts that you see when water quality is addressed or improved? What kind of advantages are there for that operation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as I've gone through this research space, the biggest impact that I think is that we've created awareness around that water quality actually does matter. It's not just water quantity, but the quantity, or the quality. And so when we start to dive into that, we start to see that, wow, some of our water systems maybe have some failures, or that we're not administering our medications appropriately, or that there's biofilms and mineral scale that are impacting, health and performance. And so what I've seen is that we are driving some awareness now that, yes, we need to do some waterline cleaning and continuous disinfection of these water sources. And so when I see farms start to bring awareness, start to monitor, and then start to implement some of these strategies, they see increases in average daily gain and feed efficiency, reduction in mortality, all of those things. I know that there was a recent study that Pipestone had assessed in nursery pigs, and they saw between well water and rural water sources, they found like a 4% reduction in mortality. So that's pretty impressive, honestly. And so there's a lot of things that are really pretty neat about, once we start to develop that awareness and start to implement some of these strategies to improve water quality, we can see a lot of those benefits there.
So how best to go about impacting waterline biofilms and really improving water quality on our farms?
Yeah, so the first thing that we need to do is really, it involves waterline cleaning and disinfection of the continuous water supply that is being supplied to those animals. And so we, try to understand what's the water quality profile to begin with, and then what are those best chemistries that target, the biofilm, the mineral scale, and then what would, a continuous regimen look like over time. And so really managing those biofilms is super important. Not only for pig health and performance, but also from, a medication standpoint too, because there's a lot of antimicrobial resistance genes within those biofilms. And, there's a lot of capabilities for them to potentially inactivate those medications as well.
And this is a topic that you're going to be addressing at an upcoming Chem and Intestinal Health Symposium, I believe, right? In next week, October 16th and 17th. So is this your message? You're going to have any kind of key takeaways that you want that audience to you're going to, push and talk about?
Yeah, no, I think this talk is general, what I'm going to be discussing at the Chem and Intestinal Health Symposium and other things is just, trying to generate this awareness. Yes, we need to pay attention to water quality, and it can have an impact on health and performance in pigs and all sorts of other species as well. And so the starting point is to monitor your water quality first, and then, the rest kind of sorts itself out with choosing the chemistries and those interventions based on what your farm's water quality is. So.
Very good. I want to thank you so much for your time here today. Really appreciate your insight. And on your screen, anyone who's interested in the Chem and Intestinal Health Symposium, feel free to go to that URL and check it out. They'll be talking about poultry, swine, dairy, beef, equine, a lot of topics that are related to key pillars of intestinal health. So thank you so much for joining us here today for Feedstuffs. I'm Sarah Muirhead.